Jaden Williams sat on the cold metal bench of Lincoln High's gymnasium, his hands gripping a basketball he wasn't sure he'd ever get to play with in a real game. His gaze fixated on the court, where his teammates practiced drills under the sharp commands of Coach Donaldson. Jaden knew he had the skill to be out there with them. His shots were accurate, his defense solid, and his drive unmatched. But no matter how hard he worked, his name was never called. "Williams, stay on the bench," Coach Donaldson had said with a dismissive wave just last week. "We've got enough players on the court." Jaden's stomach clenched at the memory. It wasn't just about playing, it was about being seen, about proving to himself and everyone else that he belonged. But Coach Donaldson's favoritism for players from wealthier families had become an unspoken rule in the locker room. Jaden, who came from a working-class background, wasn't part of the in crowd, and it showed. As practice ended, Jaden's sister, Maya, approached him in the hallway. Her face was a mixture of frustration and determination. "Jaden, you can't keep letting him treat you like this," she said, her voice low but intense. "What choice do I have?" Jaden replied, his voice tinged with resignation. "He's the coach. What he says goes." Maya crossed her arms. "That doesn't mean he's right. I've been watching, and it's not just you. He's benched every player who doesn't fit his mold." Jaden sighed, his shoulders slumping. "What can we do, Maya? He's the one in charge." Maya's eyes lit up with a spark of determination. "We'll figure something out. You deserve better than this, and I'm not going to let him get away with it." The next day, Maya sat at the family's dining table, her laptop open and a notebook filled with scrawled notes beside her. Jaden walked in after school, dropping his backpack onto the floor. "What are you doing?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder. "Research," Maya said, not looking up. "I'm looking into Coach Donaldson's record and the school's policies on sports team selection. Turns out, he's been at Lincoln High for over a decade, and there have been complaints about him before." Jaden frowned. "Complaints? What kind?" Maya scrolled through an article on her screen. "Favoritism, mostly. Parents saying he's biased toward players from certain families. It's all unofficial, but there's a pattern." Jaden sat down next to her. His curiosity piqued. "So what do we do with that?" Maya closed her laptop and looked him in the eye. "We're going to gather evidence. If he's discriminating against players like you, we need to prove it. Videos of practices, testimonies from other players, whatever it takes." Jaden hesitated. "What if it doesn't work? What if it just makes things worse?" Maya reached out and squeezed his hand. "It's a risk, Jaden, but you deserve to be treated fairly. If we don't stand up to him, who will?" Over the next few weeks, Maya and Jaden worked tirelessly. Maya borrowed a friend's camera to record practices from the bleachers, capturing moments where Coach Donaldson ignored Jaden's raised hand or dismissed his efforts. Jaden's friends, Marcus and Tasha, helped by speaking to other players who had similar experiences. Slowly, a clearer picture of the coach's bias began to emerge. One afternoon, Jaden sat with Marcus in the school cafeteria. "Do you think this will actually change anything?" Jaden asked, poking at his lunch. Marcus nodded. "If enough people see what's going on, they'll have to do something. Schools care about their reputation." Tasha joined them, sliding into the seat across from Jaden. "I've got a friend who works for the local newspaper. She said she'd be willing to look into this if we give her the evidence." Jaden's eyes widened. "You're serious?" Tasha grinned. "Totally. She loves exposing stuff like this. Just make sure we have everything ready to show her." That evening, Maya compiled all the footage and testimonies into a detailed report. She showed it to Jaden, who felt a mix of nervousness and hope as he reviewed it. "This is really happening," he said quietly. Maya nodded. "It is, and it's going to make a difference." A week later, the story broke. The local newspaper ran an article titled, "Favoritism on the Court, Lincoln High's Basketball Bias Exposed." The article included anonymous quotes from players, screenshots of Maya's footage, and a detailed account of Jaden's experiences. The school's administration couldn't ignore the backlash. Parents demanded answers, and students started speaking out on social media. Coach Donaldson was called into a meeting with the school board. Maya and Jaden were invited to share their side of the story. Jaden's voice trembled as he spoke, but Maya's steady presence beside him gave him strength. "I just want a fair chance," he said, looking directly at the board members. "That's all I've ever wanted." In the end, the board decided to suspend Coach Donaldson pending further investigation. An interim coach was brought in, and Jaden finally got his chance to play. His first game was nerve-wracking, but as he stepped onto the court and heard the cheers from his friends and family, he felt a surge of confidence. Jaden played with everything he had, scoring points, making assists, and proving to everyone that he deserved to be there. When the final buzzer sounded, his team had won, and Jaden was surrounded by his teammates, who patted him on the back and praised his performance. After the game, Maya hugged him tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she said, tears in her eyes. Jaden smiled, finally feeling like he belonged. "We did it, Maya. We proved them wrong." Their victory wasn't just about basketball. It was about standing up for what was right and refusing to be silenced. And as Jaden looked around at the supportive faces in the crowd, he knew this was only the beginning of something bigger. Over the next few days, Maya immersed herself in uncovering the truth. She pored over team rosters and game statistics, comparing players' performance metrics and the amount of time they spent on the court. A pattern began to emerge. The players who got the most playtime all had something in common. They came from affluent families. Their parents were often donors to the school, attended every PTA meeting, or held influential positions in the community. Meanwhile, players like Jaden, Malik, and a few others who hailed from less privileged backgrounds were consistently overlooked regardless of their talent. Maya shared her suspicions with Jaden's best friends, Malik and Ryan, during lunch one day. "I'm telling you, this isn't a coincidence," she said, leaning in as her voice dropped to a whisper. "It's like Coach Donaldson doesn't even see you guys." Malik nodded, his jaw tightening. "I've been feeling it for a while now. I can't count the number of times I've outplayed some of the starters in practice, but come game day, I'm warming the bench." Ryan leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "I thought I was imagining things, but now that you mention it, yeah. The coach always seems to favor the guys whose dads are sitting in the front row, clapping a little too loud." "That's exactly what I've been finding," Maya said, pulling out her notebook. "I've started documenting every instance I can. Times when Jaden or you guys made a great play in practice but didn't get acknowledged. Times when a starter messed up during a game but stayed in anyway. We're building a case here." That evening, Maya spread her findings across the dining table at home. Pages of notes, printouts of game stats, and even a few blurry photos of the team's lineup were scattered in front of Jaden, Malik, and Ryan. "This isn't just favoritism," Maya said, her voice trembling with controlled anger. "It's discrimination. Coach Donaldson is holding you back because you don't fit his idea of what a player should look like." Jaden stared at the papers, his brow furrowed. "I get what you're saying, Maya, but how do we prove it? And even if we do, who's gonna care? He's the coach. He makes the rules." Ryan spoke up, his voice quiet but firm. "People will care if we give them a reason to. This isn't just about basketball. It's about fairness. If we don't say something, he'll keep doing this." "We need more than just stats," Malik added. "We need something that'll grab people's attention, like video evidence or testimonies." Maya nodded. "You're right. We'll start recording practices. If we can show Jaden and others outplaying the starters but still getting benched, people will have to listen." Jaden sighed, leaning back in his chair. I don't know, Maya. What if this just makes things worse? What if he benches me for good or kicks me off the team? Maya reached across the table, placing a hand on his arm. Jaden, you've already been sidelined. What more can he do to you? This isn't just about you. It's about every kid who's been treated like they don't matter. You're stronger than this. We all believe in you. After a moment of silence, Jaden nodded, his resolve hardening. Okay, let's do it. The next day, the group got to work. Malik managed to borrow a small camcorder from his older brother, and Ryan used his phone to record practices from different angles. Maya compiled the footage and cross-referenced it with game stats to highlight the disparities. Slowly but surely, their evidence began to build. One evening, as they huddled around Maya's laptop in the living room, she showed them the edited video she had put together. It was damning. The clips showcased Jaden making incredible plays in practice, hitting three-pointers, blocking shots, and outmaneuvering starters, only to be ignored by Coach Donaldson. Meanwhile, the same starters fumbled during games, yet remained on the court. This is solid, Ryan said, nodding in approval. If this doesn't open people's eyes, I don't know what will. Maya closed the laptop and looked at the group. I've already reached out to Carla Stevens, a local reporter. She's interested in hearing your story. If we can get this out to the media, it'll put pressure on the school to take action. Jaden's eyes widened. The media? Maya, this is starting to feel bigger than I expected. It is bigger, Maya said gently, but that's why it's so important. This isn't just about one coach or one team. It's about a system that lets people like Coach Donaldson get away with this. You have a chance to change that. After a moment, Jaden nodded again, determination flickering in his eyes. Okay, let's meet with Carla. The meeting with Carla Stevens was nerve-wracking but productive. Carla listened intently as Jaden, Malik, and Ryan recounted their experiences. She watched the video Maya had compiled, her expression growing more serious with each passing moment. This is powerful, Carla said finally, setting down her notepad. If you're willing to go on record, I can write a piece that'll get people talking. But you need to be ready for the backlash. Not everyone's going to be on your side. Jaden swallowed hard. I'm ready. This needs to be said. Within days, Carla's article was published online, accompanied by the video footage. The story quickly gained traction, sparking heated debates in the community. Parents of other benched players came forward with their own stories, adding weight to the claims of discrimination. The school board announced an investigation into Coach Donaldson's practices. Jaden's phone buzzed constantly with messages, some supportive, others hostile. But amidst the chaos, he felt a sense of pride he hadn't experienced before. For the first time, he was being heard. At the next game, Jaden sat on the bench as usual, but the atmosphere in the gym was different. Parents and students whispered in the stands, their eyes darting toward Coach Donaldson, who looked unusually tense. When the team started to falter midway through the game, chants of, "Put Jaden in," erupted from the crowd. Reluctantly, Coach Donaldson called Jaden's name. As Jaden stepped onto the court, his heart pounded, but he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. This was his moment to prove he belonged, and he did. Jaden played like a man on fire, scoring points, making assists and energizing his teammates. By the end of the game, the crowd was on its feet, cheering his name. Afterward, Coach Donaldson approached Jaden, his expression unreadable. "Good game, Williams," he said gruffly before walking away. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Jaden knew the fight wasn't over, but for the first time he felt like he was winning. The next game was a pivotal one, drawing a larger crowd than usual. The tension in the gym was palpable as Jaden sat on the bench, as he always did, watching his team take on their biggest rivals. The stakes were high. This game could determine their position in the playoffs. Jaden's heart raced with every missed shot and turnover, his hands gripping the edge of the bench. He knew he could help, But as usual, Coach Donaldson didn't even glance in his direction. By halftime, the score was close, and the energy in the gym was electric. The starters looked exhausted, their movements sluggish as they struggled to keep up with their opponents. Jaden leaned forward, his eyes scanning the court. He could see the gaps in the defense, the missed opportunities for fast breaks, and the hesitation in the players' movements. He knew exactly what he would do if given the chance. As the game wore on, the tension only increased. With 5 minutes left on the clock, the score was tied. The crowd was on its feet, cheering and shouting as the players battled for every point. Then disaster struck. One of the starters, a tall forward who was key to the team's defense, went down hard after a collision under the basket. The gym fell silent as he clutched his ankle, wincing in pain. 2 teammates helped him off the court, and it was clear he wouldn't be returning to the game. Jaden saw his opportunity. He jumped to his feet and turned to Coach Donaldson. "Coach, put me in," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "I can do this." Coach Donaldson barely spared him a glance, his face twisted in frustration. "Sit down, Williams. I've got this," he said dismissively, waving him off like an afterthought. Jaden's stomach dropped, but he stayed standing, his hands clenched into fists. He watched in disbelief as the coach called for another player, a freshman who had barely played all season and was visibly nervous. The freshman jogged onto the court, his movements hesitant as he tried to find his place in the lineup. The game resumed, and it quickly became clear that the substitution wasn't working. The team's defense faltered, and their offense became disjointed. Jaden sat back down, his chest tight as he watched the rivals pull ahead. The crowd's cheers grew louder for the opposing team, and the frustration on the faces of Jaden's teammates was unmistakable. In the final moments, the team made a desperate push to tie the game, but their efforts fell short. The buzzer sounded, and the rivals celebrated their hard-fought victory. The disappointment in the gym was tangible. Players hung their heads and fans shuffled out, murmuring about missed chances and questionable coaching decisions. Jaden sat on the bench long after the game ended, his mind racing. He knew he could have made a difference. He had seen the openings, the plays that could have turned the tide. But once again, he hadn't been given the chance. His jaw tightened as he gathered his things, anger and frustration boiling inside him. Outside in the parking lot, Maya was waiting, her arms crossed and her face set in a determined expression. As Coach Donaldson walked toward his car, she stepped into his path. "Coach, can I have a word?" she called, her voice sharp. The coach turned, his brows furrowing. "What is it?" he asked, clearly impatient. "Why didn't you let Jaden play?" Maya demanded, her tone firm. "You saw how the game was going. You needed someone who could step up, and he was right there, asking to help." Coach Donaldson scoffed, shaking his head. "He's not ready for that level of pressure," he said dismissively, turning back toward his car. Maya wasn't about to let him off that easily. She stepped closer, her eyes blazing. "Not ready? Or is it because he doesn't come from a family with money and connections?" "We're not blind, Coach. We see what's going on." The coach froze, his face reddening as her words hit home. He turned back to her, his mouth opening as if to respond, but no words came out. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the tension thick between them. Finally, he shook his head again and muttered, "You don't know what you're talking about." With that, he turned and walked away, his shoulders stiff. Maya watched him go, her fists clenched at her sides. She knew she had struck a nerve, but the coach's refusal to acknowledge the truth only fueled her determination. Turning back toward the gym, she spotted Jaden leaning against the wall, his bag slung over his shoulder. "I heard what you said," Jaden said quietly as she approached. "Thanks for standing up for me." Maya placed a hand on his arm, her expression softening. "You deserve better, Jaden. This isn't over. We're going to make sure people see what's really happening." Jaden nodded, his jaw set. I just want a fair shot, that's all. And you'll get it, Maya promised. One way or another, we'll make sure of it. As they walked away together, Jaden felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Maya by his side, he knew he wasn't alone in this fight. Carla Stevens published an article detailing Jaden's story, weaving together hard facts with heartfelt accounts. The piece was a compelling exposé, complete with interviews from former and current players, revealing instances of blatant favoritism. It included statistics that showed the stark disparity in playtime among players from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and testimonials from others who had experienced similar treatment. Carla also highlighted how the school's culture had allowed this to continue unchecked for so long. The article hit the local news circuit like a thunderclap. Within hours of its publication, the article began circulating among students, parents, and the wider community. Social media lit up with posts and comments, many expressing outrage. Unbelievable how kids are being treated based on their parents' bank accounts, one person wrote. This coach needs to go. Another chimed in, favoritism has no place in high school sports. Give every player a fair shot. The article quickly became the talk of the town, sparking heated debates in school hallways, coffee shops, and even at PTA meetings. At school, Jaden found himself thrust into an unfamiliar spotlight. For someone who had spent so much time being overlooked, the sudden attention was overwhelming. As he walked through the hallways, classmates he barely knew stopped him to offer words of encouragement. You're brave for speaking out, one teammate told him during lunch. I've seen what he's done to you. It's not fair, and I'm glad someone finally said something. Another student nodded in agreement, sharing how their sibling had faced the same treatment on another team. But not everyone was supportive. Some parents, particularly those who had benefited from the coach's favoritism, rushed to defend him. Coach Donaldson is just doing what's best for the team, one parent wrote in a heated Facebook thread. Not everyone deserves equal playtime. That's just how life works. Others dismissed the article as exaggerated, claiming it painted an unfair picture of a hardworking coach. The school board released a carefully worded statement saying they were aware of the concerns and would review the matter internally. Jaden tried to focus on his classes, but the whispers and sideways glances were impossible to ignore. One afternoon, as he headed to his locker, he overheard a group of students talking in the hallway. Their voices were hushed, but their words carried clearly to his ears. He's just playing the victim, one boy sneered. If he was really good, he'd be on the court. Another chimed in, exactly. He should stop whining and work harder instead of dragging everyone else down. Jaden felt a surge of anger rise in his chest, his fists clenching at his sides. Every fiber of his being wanted to turn around and confront them, to demand they walk a mile in his shoes before passing judgment. But he stopped himself, Maya's words echoing in his mind. This fight isn't just about you, it's about everyone who's been treated unfairly. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to keep walking, even as the sting of their words lingered. In the days that followed, the fallout from Carla's article continued to grow. A student-led petition demanding accountability from the administration gathered hundreds of signatures. Parents began emailing the school board, demanding answers and transparency. Even local news stations picked up the story, interviewing students and community members who shared their thoughts on the controversy. Still, the situation remained complicated. While some rallied around Jaden, others sought to discredit him, spreading rumors and questioning his motives. Jaden stayed quiet, focusing on his training and relying on Maya, Malik, and Ryan for support. You've already done something incredible, Maya reminded him one evening as they sat at the kitchen table. You've opened people's eyes. Change doesn't happen overnight, but you've started something that can't be ignored. Jaden nodded. though the weight of it all felt heavy on his shoulders. He couldn't help but wonder if things would really change, or if in the end the system would protect itself as it always had. But when he thought about the younger players who looked up to him, the kids who might one day face the same obstacles he had, he knew he couldn't give up. As the weeks went on, the pressure on the administration grew. Emails and phone calls poured in, and the school board was forced to schedule a public meeting to address the issue. Jaden wasn't sure what the outcome would be, but he knew one thing for certain: he wouldn't let his voice be silenced again. Under mounting pressure from the community, the school was forced to launch an investigation into Coach Donaldson's practices. Parents, students, and local activists demanded answers, and the administration could no longer ignore the growing outcry. A special committee was formed to review the allegations, consisting of school officials, parent representatives, and even an impartial observer from the district office. Meetings were scheduled, interviews conducted, and records examined. For weeks, the atmosphere at Lincoln High was tense, with everyone waiting to see how the investigation would unfold. Meanwhile, Jaden channeled all his emotions into his training. Each morning, he woke up before sunrise to run drills on the public courts near his house. Evenings were spent at the gym, perfecting his shot, improving his footwork, and building his stamina. His determination was unshakable. He didn't just want to prove himself to Coach Donaldson. He wanted to prove himself to everyone who doubted him. Every missed opportunity replayed in his mind, fueling his drive to be better, faster, and stronger. One chilly afternoon during practice, as the team ran through their usual drills, Jaden kept his focus sharp. Though he wasn't officially on the court, he performed every drill from the sidelines, mirroring his teammates' movements. He refused to let anyone see him slacking, not even for a moment. It was during one of these practice sessions that assistant coach Harris, a quiet but observant figure on the sidelines, approached him. "Jaden," Harris said, his tone low but encouraging as he motioned for Jaden to step aside. Jaden hesitated, glancing toward the court where the drills continued, but Harris gestured again. Reluctantly, Jaden followed him to a quieter corner of the gym. "I've been watching you," Harris began, folding his arms across his chest. His expression was thoughtful, his voice carrying a sincerity that immediately put Jaden at ease. "You've got real talent, Jaden, more than most of the guys out there. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." For a moment, Jaden was too stunned to respond. Praise from a coach, any coach, was something he hadn't heard in a long time. "Thanks, Coach," he finally said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "It means a lot to hear that. I just want a fair chance." Harris nodded, his gaze steady. "I know, and I want you to know, not everyone agrees with how things have been run around here. I've been keeping an eye on the way Donaldson's been handling the roster, and I don't like what I've seen. It's not right." Jaden swallowed hard, feeling a mixture of relief and frustration. "I just don't understand why he won't give me a shot. I've worked just as hard as everyone else, harder even." "You have," Harris agreed, "and I've seen it. Trust me when I say your hard work isn't going unnoticed. Change takes time, but I promise you, it's coming." Jaden searched Harris's face, looking for any hint of insincerity, but found none. "Do you really think I'll get a chance?" he asked quietly. "You'll get it," Harris said firmly, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "I'll make sure of it." Harris's words stayed with Jaden long after practice ended that day. For the first time in weeks, he felt a flicker of hope, a glimmer of belief that maybe, just maybe, things would start to turn around. While the investigation into Donaldson's practices continued, Jaden knew he couldn't control the outcome. What he could control was his effort, his attitude, and his commitment to the game he loved. And with Harris in his corner, he felt like he finally had an ally who believed in him. As he left the gym that evening, the crisp night air filled his lungs, and he glanced up at the stars. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Jaden felt like he wasn't walking it alone. The investigation into Coach Donaldson's practices sent shockwaves through Lincoln High. Parents, students, and faculty followed every update, waiting anxiously to see what the committee would decide. The final report, released during a special school assembly, left no room for doubt. It concluded that Coach Donaldson had shown clear bias in his roster decisions, favoring certain players based on their family background and connections rather than their skills or dedication. The findings were a damning indictment of his leadership. The administration acted swiftly, removing Donaldson from his position. His departure sent ripples through the school, with some students and parents expressing relief and others struggling to defend him. Assistant Coach Harris was appointed as the interim head coach, a decision that was met with overwhelming support from the team and community. Harris, known for his fairness and encouragement, wasted no time setting a new tone for the basketball program. When the news broke, Jaden felt a mix of emotions, vindication, relief, and a cautious optimism. For years, he had poured his heart into basketball, only to have his efforts overlooked. Now, for the first time, he felt like the door to opportunity was finally opening. The first game under Coach Harris's leadership was highly anticipated. The gym buzzed with excitement as fans packed the stands, eager to see how the team would perform under their new coach. Jaden sat on the bench, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to focus on the game, but his mind raced with questions. Would Harris give him a chance? Would he finally be able to prove himself? Midway through the first quarter, Harris turned to Jaden. "Williams, you're up," he said, his voice calm but firm. Jaden froze for a moment, the words almost too surreal to process. Then, as if on autopilot, he grabbed his jersey and jogged onto the court. The cheers from the crowd were deafening, a mix of encouragement and curiosity. This was his moment, a chance to show everyone what he was capable of. From the moment the ball touched his hands, Jaden was unstoppable. He moved with precision and confidence, sinking shot after shot, and executing plays with skill and determination. The crowd erupted each time he scored, their cheers growing louder with every point. By halftime, it was clear that Jaden wasn't just holding his own, he was leading the team. In the final moments of the game, with the score tight, Jaden made a crucial steal and sprinted down the court. Time seemed to slow as he leapt into the air, releasing the ball with perfect form. The gym fell silent as the ball arced toward the hoop, then exploded into cheers as it swished through the net. The buzzer sounded, signaling their victory. Jaden had not only played, he had led his team to a decisive win. After the game, Jaden stood on the court, overwhelmed by the moment. His teammates surrounded him, patting his back and shouting his name. For the first time, he felt truly seen, not as a bench warmer or underdog, but as a player who belonged. Coach Harris approached him, a proud smile on his face. "You proved yourself out there tonight, Jaden. I'm proud of you," he said, extending his hand. Jaden shook it, his smile wide and genuine. "Thanks, Coach. I just needed the opportunity," he replied, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. Meanwhile, Coach Donaldson issued a public apology. In a carefully worded statement released to the local newspaper, he admitted his mistakes. "I failed to see the potential in all of my players, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. My actions were unfair, and I take full responsibility for the impact they've had," he wrote. While some doubted the sincerity of his words, others saw it as a step toward accountability. Jaden's story quickly became a source of inspiration. News of his perseverance and triumph spread beyond the school, resonating with people throughout the community. Local organizations invited him to speak at events, and younger athletes looked up to him as a role model. His journey became a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of standing up against injustice. The basketball program at Lincoln High underwent significant changes under Harris's leadership. Tryouts became more inclusive, and every player was evaluated on their skills and dedication, not their family's social standing. The team thrived, and the newfound culture of fairness and camaraderie brought them closer than ever before. For Jaden, the victory was about more than just basketball. It was about proving that hard work and determination could overcome even the most unfair obstacles. As he walked off the court that night, the cheers of the crowd still echoing in his ears, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The weight of years of frustration had lifted, replaced by a newfound confidence and the knowledge that he had finally earned his place. The community rallied around Jaden and his teammates, celebrating not just their victory, but the larger change it represented. Lincoln High would never be the same, and neither would Jaden. His story was a reminder to everyone that sometimes all it takes is one person willing to fight for what's right to spark a transformation. Jaden used his newfound platform to advocate for equity in sports, transforming his personal victory into a mission to help others. He began receiving invitations to speak at schools, community centers, and even local government meetings. At these events, Jaden shared his story with a mix of humility and passion, recounting the challenges he had faced and the lessons he had learned. "It's not just about basketball," he would say. "It's about making sure everyone has a fair shot, no matter where they come from or what they look like." The impact of Jaden's advocacy was immediate and far-reaching. Students approached him after his speeches, sharing their own experiences of unfair treatment in sports, academics, and other areas of their lives. Parents thanked him for standing up, some admitting that they hadn't realized the extent of the problem until they heard his story. Coaches from neighboring schools began to rethink their own practices, inspired by Jaden's call for fairness and inclusion. Meanwhile, Maya continued her work as a journalist, using her voice to shine a light on issues of discrimination and inequality. The article she had written about Jaden's journey had sparked a broader conversation about bias in high school athletics, and she wasn't about to let that momentum fade. She started a series of investigative pieces, uncovering similar stories in other schools and highlighting the systemic changes needed to address the issue. Maya's work wasn't without its challenges. She faced criticism from those who felt she was stirring up trouble or unfairly targeting coaches and administrators. But she remained steadfast, driven by the belief that exposing the truth was the first step toward justice. "If we don't talk about it, nothing will ever change," she would tell Jaden during their late-night brainstorming sessions. Jaden and Maya quickly became a formidable team. While Jaden inspired others with his story, Maya provided the platform and the investigative work to amplify his message. Together, they organized workshops for student athletes, teaching them how to recognize and address bias in their own teams. They also met with school officials and policymakers, advocating for more transparent and equitable practices in sports programs. As their work gained recognition, Jaden and Maya were invited to appear on local news shows and podcasts. During one interview, Jaden was asked how it felt to go from being overlooked on the bench to becoming a symbol of change. He paused for a moment, then said, "It's not about me. This is about every kid who's been told they're not good enough, not because of their skills, but because of something they can't control. If my story can help even one person feel seen and valued, then it's all worth it." The court, which had once been a source of frustration and disappointment for Jaden, took on a new meaning. Every time he stepped onto the polished hardwood, he felt a surge of pride, not just in his abilities as a player, but in the journey that had brought him there. The court was no longer just a place to play. It was a symbol of triumph, a reminder that he had earned his place through hard work, resilience, and the courage to speak out. Jaden's story also began to inspire change beyond Lincoln High. Other schools in the district started reviewing their athletic programs, implementing policies to ensure that decisions were based on merit rather than favoritism. Statewide organizations took notice, launching initiatives to promote equity in youth sports. Jaden was invited to serve as a spokesperson for one such program, traveling across the state to share his insights and encourage young athletes to believe in their worth. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Not everyone welcomed the changes. Some coaches and parents resisted, arguing that the focus on fairness was unnecessary or disruptive. Jaden overheard whispers at games and read anonymous comments online questioning his motives and dismissing his achievements. Yet, he refused to let the negativity deter him. Instead, he leaned on Maya, his teammates, and the countless people who had rallied around him, finding strength in their support. One evening, after a particularly inspiring event at a local middle school, Jaden and Maya sat on the bleachers, reflecting on how far they had come. "Do you ever think about how all of this started?" Maya asked, a smile playing on her lips. "One game, one decision by a coach, and look where we are now." Jaden nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It's kind of crazy, isn't it? But it just shows that even the smallest actions can have a huge impact. We just have to be willing to take the first step. And to keep going, even when it's hard," Maya added. Their work continued to make a difference, both in their community and beyond. Jaden's speeches and Maya's articles sparked countless conversations, challenging people to confront their own biases and strive for greater fairness in all aspects of life. Together, they proved that change was possible, even in the face of immense challenges. For Jaden, basketball had become more than just a sport. The court was a place where he could showcase his talent. But it was also a platform for something much bigger, a movement for equity, justice, and the belief that everyone deserved a fair chance. It was a reminder that his journey, though difficult, had been worth every step. And for those who had once felt silenced, Jaden had become a powerful voice, proving that with courage and perseverance, they too could make a difference.